Namaskar. Hello, friends. Today I am taking up, at the request of a friend, how to handle the feeling of guilt. When does one feel guilty and why? When one realizes that he did something wrong, that is called as an act of commission, or that he should have done a particular thing but did not do it, or did something else instead, that is called an act of omission. But how does the feeling of guilt help? One may say that it helps one avoid a similar mistake in future. However, this cannot be guaranteed, since the future scenario, though substantially similar, may have some critical known or unknown differences. In other words, the guilty feeling may have a doubtful utility in future. The feeling of guilt can help one repent and try and wash it off to get some mental peace. This may take the form of saying sincerely sorry to the person who may have been aggrieved by one's wrong act of commission or omission, or compensating him in some way. However, at times it may be too late for atonement, since the aggrieved person may be no more. This describes how to deal with guilt on a worldly plane. However, there is a spiritual way of looking at guilt and dealing with it. Spiritually, we are all like robots or puppets driven by our inherent gunas, that is Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. And we can be considered to be helpless as regards the actions or omissions on our part from time to time. The latter simply happen without our control. In other words, we are not the real doers of our actions. If so, then why carry any guilt at all? Just take things as they come and move on without carrying any mental baggage of guilt. Besides, spiritually, this creation is inherently dual, with both right and wrong, good and bad, coexisting like two sides of the same coin. So, while something may be seen as wrong in a worldly sense, it is just an inevitable aspect of the duality of this world. It is just that one happened to be in the wrong, and it was not his fault in a spiritual sense. Also, this creation has a tremendous variety by way of excuse me, by way of objects and happenings. Everything belongs to its space and time. Like a nicely engaging movie or a drama usually must have both good and bad characters and happy as well as sad happenings. It is just that the director selected one person for enacting a good character and another for a bad character. The actors simply act out their part without being judgmental. Likewise, we should regard ourselves as mere actors in this magnificent drama of this creation without carrying any burden of the role assigned to us. It then follows that if one internalizes this philosophy, then there would be no place for guilty feeling. Of course, this is on the mental plane and it does not preclude any appropriate action by way of atonement in the external world. In any case, a wrong in the worldly sense may get punished under the laws of the land or socially, notwithstanding that spiritually it was inevitable. The role of doing on the spiritual path. Do we need to do something, anything at all, to achieve our spiritual goal of self realization? First of all, let me put down my understanding of doing in the present context. I would like to define doing as a visible bodily action that can be seen by those around us. With that understanding of the word doing, I would like to say that it is not necessary to do something or anything at all to attain self realization. Our scriptures, in particular Srimad Bhagavad Gita, do talk of many different paths to self realization. For example, Karma Marga, which is path to liberation, that involves doing your duty without bothering about its outcome, is prescribed for those who are rooted in the physical world, and it allows that space for remaining engaged in action while pursuing spiritual goal. However, Jnana Marga, which is path of contemplation on the oneness of all creation, is purely contemplation with no importance for action. Wise sages have said that we are all pure souls. It is only because of Maya, that is illusion, that we have forgotten our true nature and have come to identify with this body and many other worldly illusory phenomena. What it takes to go back to our true identity is simply discarding this illusion. There are many metaphors used in scriptures to illustrate this. For example, an illusion of a snake on a necklace of beads. In inadequate light, we may believe a necklace of beads to be a snake and be fearful. However, a closer look will show that it isn't a snake. The other metaphor that was described in detail is that of a parrot clinging on to the hunter's tube. So we suffer from an illusion that this physical world and our bodily identity are real, though they are not. We don't need to do anything to get released from the illusory Maya, because it is not as if the Maya is tying us down. We ourselves have willy-nilly chosen to believe that we are bound to this illusory world. Just like that parrot that sits on the tube hung to the tree by the hunter, and then it turns upside down but still keeps clinging on to the tube because it thinks it is falling, although it can very well choose to simply fly away. That is why I believe it is not important what you are doing outwardly to realize your true self, because you don't need to do anything. Yes, most of us seekers would end up doing something that they believe needs to be done, and that is due to our conditioning, our sense of doership, our tendency to associate an objective with some action in a cause effect relationship. But we need not give undue importance to that action, so that we will be able to pursue our path without debilitating doubts. Otherwise, we may get too much drowned in analyzing various practices and may even keep hopping from one to the other. I believe it is important to stick to some practice, whatever one is comfortable with, and focus on contemplation, since that is what will bring about the mental reformation. That doing may be in the form of pujas, visiting temples and holy places, reading scriptures, participating in satsang, that is company of spiritually inclined people, meditation, jap, that is remembering God's name, etc. We should remember that what we are doing cannot directly take us to our goal, but that doing could and should help us take our mind away from the physical towards the spiritual. We should also remember that if we are engaged in such doing, but our mind is wandering away to the physical world, then that doing is of no use. For example, we may sit down with a mala, that is a rosary of beads, and engage in a jap, but our conscious mind may immediately start wandering by handing over the task of jap to the subconscious mind. Can such a doing help in reforming our mind? Hardly. In fact, revered Sant Shri Dnyaneshwar Maharaj, in his commentary on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verses 14 and 15, very expansively says that those who are engaged in efforts to cross the samsara river do not succeed. He emphasizes that only Sharanagati, that is true and complete surrender to Bhagavan, that is God, in the form of one Sadguru, can get one released from samsara, worldly life. In fact, I believe it is more important to stop doing, in the worldly sense, what you have been engaged in so far. For example, it would be useful if one reduced dining out from once a week to once a month, and then to only on certain special occasions like birthdays and anniversaries, if not altogether stopping. That kind of not doing is more likely to help us get away gradually from the physical world. So one need not rate one's own spiritual practice the best or better than someone else's. One should also not unnecessarily get confused as to whether what he is doing is right or something else would be better. A seeker should not compare the results with those attained by someone else on the basis of the so-called signs of progress, like seeing a bindu, that is spot of light in meditation, etc. More importantly, one should not fight or try to convince someone else how his doing is better than the other person's. The most important aspect of spiritual pursuit is contemplation on the spiritual aspects. Shift from doing to being. In the physical world, when we as embodied souls do not have any spiritual outlook, we implicitly believe that fulfillment of our desires is the primary objective of our being in this world. We also believe that we have to do something to fulfill our desires. We believe our doing leads to the outcomes that we experience. So doing, that is action, shrouds the core of our being completely and effectively. If we are a little spiritual, we believe that our doing is only partly responsible for the outcome. And we also believe that there are many other factors that are responsible for the outcome. But since our desires still exist, they keep inspiring us towards action. As we progress on the spiritual path, our desires start reducing. When we are firmly established in spirituality, we have no physical desires. We then understand that the real truth is in only being what we truly are, and not in doing. Our core being is, in fact, alien to this physical world. It is here only temporarily for a transitory experience of the magnificent duality which is actually just an illusion. It is like our sitting in a movie theater for a couple of hours to watch a movie. We watch various characters on the screen and get engrossed in the story woven around them for the duration of the movie. But our real person and our real life story is quite different from the movie. Same is the case with our so called real self watching. Sorry, let me repeat this. Same is the case with our real self watching this movie called life. The essence of spirituality is therefore to be fully aware, conscious of our real being, and not think about doing. Let the doing, such as it may be, automatically happen out of that awareness. That is why the key spiritual concepts are all about being. Being one with God, for example, is the ultimate objective of spiritual seeking. Towards achieving that, the various things that a seeker is advised to do are not really physical actions. They are in the nature of mental attitudes and contemplations. For example, a spiritual seeker is asked to do sadhana in the form of meditation. Now, meditation is not doing anything at all. It is simply sitting quietly and observing our mental processes. Spirituality also emphasizes the importance of bhakti, that is, devotion and love towards God. Again, bhakti is not something to be done, nor is loving God an action. It is simply a sincere bhav, that is, a mental formation of total identification with God by forgetting our bodily identification. Great saints like Sant Janabai, Gora Kumbhar, Guru Nanak Ji, etc. were totally immersed in bhakti while doing their day-to-day chores. It is important in this regard to understand that performing a puja is not bhakti. Our revered Guru terms it as upasana, being near to God. Of course, upasana is an aid towards eventually becoming a bhakta. When we as seekers are told that Vairagya Bhav is the cornerstone of spiritual edifice, we do not have to do anything to follow it. We in fact have to stop doing many things that we have been doing thus far. All in all, spiritual progress is less and less of doing and more of being. It amounts to removal of the shroud of doing so as to expose the real being, and that is self-realization. I will stop here today and see you the next time. Until then, bye, take care.